Yeah, East St. Louis is super important, gets a bad rap. I think I saw a Facebook post with a gentleman who was from St. Louis, and he went over to East St. Louis and took a picture in front of their welcome sign and said, that's the most dangerous thing he's ever done.
Okay, St. Louis and beyond, welcome back to Meet Me in Music. We have a very special guest today, a little bit non-traditional, but I'm excited to expand the reach of our guests. We have a fabulous music journalist in St. Louis. Jasmine Osby is with us.
Hey, everybody.
Today. Jasmine is an award-winning journalist and former entertainment publicist from St. Louis Mo, and I'm reading her bio right now just so everyone knows. A passionate writer and storyteller, Jasmine's work leaves a resonating impact on all who encounter it. A creator of incredible content with a heart of a wordsmith and an innovative soul, Osby stands as a beacon within the Midwest creative community, writing for publications like Deluxe Magazine, STL Magazine, Alive Magazine, and of course, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
Yes.
All right, which is where I read all of your work. And I love the last line in your bio. Osby continues to make strides in her respective industries and advocate for minority and underrepresented stories being told in journalism.
Yes.
So we're going to get into all that today. But first, you have a Gryffindor hat on.
I do.
I love that. And you said got to represent the home team.
Yes, got to represent for the home team. I love Harry Potter.
Okay.
And I was an avid reader growing up in elementary school. I loved to read. And I really like the little Scooby-Doo mystery books. And I loved like the little Mary-Kate and Ashley theme books. And I remember being in third grade when the very first Harry Potter came out, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And we were in Walden Books in Jamestown Mall, R.I.P.
Oh my gosh. I love this
and
already.
My mom, she pointed at the Harry Potter book and she was like, this is what big kids read. And, that was my first big chapter book, was reading Harry Potter. And I just fell in love with the story. And, I'm a Leo and we're head of the class. And so I love Gryffindor because they were the best house. Shout out to everybody else too, though.
I love that. I always think about, I'm kind of a Gryffindor guy, but I could, I don't know, I could be a Ravenclaw from time to time, or I'm probably Hufflepuff though.
I feel like as I grew up,
I always respected Hufflepuff.
As an adult, I can sometimes go back and forth between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. Yeah. I definitely think so. I love plants and gardening and stuff, so sometimes it's a lot of herbology over here.
I love that. Okay, so I love that. That's everyone connects with one of those four houses on Harry Potter, and everyone has a horoscope. So you're a Leo, head of the class. I like that. I totally see that energy in you. Now that you say that, I love that. But we've never really had the chance to sit down and get to know each other. Yeah. Right? We've been kind of seeing each other out professionally and all this stuff. And I read all of your stories, and they actually, I told you this once, but it's true. They provide a lot of research from this podcast because that's it's crazy to me. You'll write about all these up and coming artists, and I'm very active in the music scene, and some of these I've never even heard of.
Yeah,
and I'm like, but then I go to their Instagram page or their Spotify page, and they've got tens of thousands of followers or tens of thousands of listeners, and they're doing stuff right here in St. Louis, and that's blows my mind.
Yeah, the scene is really rich here in St. Louis. I think that, and I'm happy that you said that. That's always my greatest hope for writing about talent coming out of our city, is that one of you will see the story and be introduced to another member of the local music community, and it'll create collaboration.
Yeah, well, it is doing that. I love your work, and it's featured on, STLtoday.com and in the print editions of the Post-Dispatch.
Yes.
But as we know, the print edition is just phasing out. We don't like that. We wish it was, I mean, I'm kind of an old soul. What about you?
I feel like I'm an old soul too. And I love nostalgia. I love history. And I also grew up reading the arts and entertainment section of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And so being inside of this role now is really special to me. And I think there's a lot of things that I really love about the digital age. But I think that we are losing some of our humanity by not doing things in real life.
Yeah.
You know, everything doesn't have to be done from behind the screen. I don't think that there's anything wrong with consuming digital news, and we are a digital first publication.
Okay.
But there's something special about cracking open a newspaper and drinking your coffee eating your breakfast. And, I remember as a kid, used to have to get the newspapers to find out the movie times.
Yeah.
And so that was why my mom would
that.
always buy it, because we went to a lot of movies. My mom's a cinephile. And we would always have the newspaper to get the movie times. And, while people can depend on Fandango for movie times, or if they're looking for housing, they can go on Zillow now or apartments.com, or jobs, you can go on Indeed. You don't need the classifieds anymore. I still think that there's something really special about touching a tangible newspaper, and I hope that, millennials and Gen Z people can gravitate more back towards print media. I think it is important to be able to touch something that you're reading. And I think that that's a big part of being human, is being able to touch things.
Yeah, no,
and be present, in the moment.
Looking for a premium cannabis experience in St. Louis? Swade Cannabis Dispensary, your go-to spot for an elevated, welcoming vibe. With multiple locations across the city, Swade offers a carefully curated experience backed by a knowledgeable team to help you find exactly what you need. Whether you're new or experienced, Swade is the dispensary for you. Absolutely. So what does it feel like to you when you open up a print issue?
It's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
That's what I always say is, like, I see my stories online, and I love seeing my byline online, but there's nothing better than seeing it in the black and white and seeing how the design team has went in and, incorporated the photographs that were in your story into the copy. And just like I said, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch has been around more than 100 years. It was founded by Joseph Pulitzer, who the Pulitzer Prize is named after. And me being a part of this legacy of St. Louis journalism is just really special to me, being born and raised here in the city.
Wow. Okay. So we'll start at the present and we'll go back.
Let's do it.
Because I want to learn all that. So tell me about that experience of landing that job. Because that was fairly recent. I mean, a year or two ago?
Almost 2 years ago.
Okay.
Almost 2 years ago. I think I started August 19th, 2024. And it was really special to me for a few reasons. One, my very first job out of high school was interning at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. They used to do a minority scholarship award where it would go to one kid from St. Louis or the Metro East area who was interested in going to journalism school. And
just one a year.
Yes, one every year. Every year they would pick a different kid.
Wow, I mean, that's not that many kids.
No, just one every year. And so when I graduated from Hazelwood East in 2009, I was the recipient that year.
Wow.
And not only did they give me money for college every year, but they also allowed you to come, when you came home during the summers, you could intern at the newspaper. And so my first job out of high school when I came home in the summer from Mizzou was working as a business news intern at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. So then coming back to the newspaper was 17 years later has been a really full circle experience for me. Like I said, I grew up reading the arts and entertainment section of the newspaper. I knew that I wanted to be a journalist very young, and it's just been such an eye-opening experience, and it makes me feel, I think what I tell people is that it's just a pleasure to write about my hometown for our, longest running publication and for a newspaper. I feel like when I was in journalism school, the rhetoric was that, by this time newspapers wouldn't be around anymore, and so to be able to write for a newspaper in my hometown, I didn't have to move to New York or Florida or LA or another city to write. And then to be able to write about arts and entertainment, which has always been such a passion of mine. It really is just my pleasure to tell these stories and, spotlight the people here that are doing incredible things with the hopes that maybe somebody somewhere might see it and help them get to the next level.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much there. I can only imagine how proud that must make you feel to do that. I mean, that's a big, and it's like, there's only one of you in St. Louis
there's
right
only
now.
one of
I mean, there is only one Jasmine Osby, of course, but there's only one this writer in St. Louis. That's unique. I don't know. That's really special. You hold a really interesting place, unique place. Some might say a powerful place. So tell me about like what it means to have that ability, that I don't want to say power, but I'm trying to find a word that's like that to the spotlight, for people. And it's like, you get to choose what you're writing about, and how does that, what are all the things that are going through your head when you're picking a story, and who are you choosing to highlight or not? And, how does that go? I'm sure that's kind of a political, not political in like a national sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like just interpersonal.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Like local music scene politics.
Yeah.
I feel like it definitely could be. For me, my focus has always just been telling stories. I love telling stories, and I love being able to document the history of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of remains at the forefront, to where I'm not really thinking about like my own personal ideas or thoughts about artists or musicians in the city. I'm really just looking for who has a good story and who has something to say inside of their music.
Mm-hmm.
And those are really the main factors that I consider when it comes to picking and choosing. I think the hardest thing is picking when to write about who. Because in my position, as far as features section, I write about 2 or 3 stories a week. And so that's only 3 people that are getting written about that week. And I know that news travels fast, and everybody wants to get written about. Everybody wants to be interviewed. And I think that the hardest thing is just reinforcing the people, just be patient with me.
Yeah.
I am still a person, at the end of the day, even within this role, still a human being. And I still have a life outside of writing for the newspaper. So I want to write about as many amazing St. Louis artists as possible. I just need the time to sift through people and make my way to those stories at the correct time.
Yeah.
I also think that for me, something that I've noticed, like, over the last decade, especially as everybody started transitioning to digital online news and, social media-based news, influencer-based news, is that it's a rush to the finish line. Almost like assembly line journalism is what I was calling it before I started at the newspaper. Where it's like, I talk to you for 5-10 minutes and then I write this article about you like I've known you all of your life. And that just doesn't work for me. I'm definitely somebody who likes to be more engrossed into the stories that I'm telling. I want to come and sit with an artist while they're working in the studio and observe your creative process. I want to come to one of your shows and observe the way you grab the mic and how far the spit flies out of your mouth when you're screaming out your songs.
Yes.
I want to talk to you a couple of times so that I can learn the inspiration behind the music that you're creating. I want to go to the places that are important to you, that were major parts of your stories, so that I can see what those places look like. And all of that comes together so that I can paint a vivid picture for the reader, and so that they can put themselves in your shoes, so that they can understand the significance behind your music. And I don't feel like that's something that can always be done after just talking to somebody on the phone for 15 or 20 minutes. And so sometimes, I might run into a story or an artist, and I might not write that story until a couple months later, because I'm taking time to get to know that artist, their story, and their music, so that I can properly write it, the correct way. Yeah,
that's a lot how I'm totally digging what you're saying, and I'm relating to it, because that's how I'm approaching this podcast too. I mean, like, I always say, like, I've got my eyes on someone, and I'm kind of just following them online and taking in their content more as just a natural consumer. Yeah. Not, just seeing how it moves me and letting stuff happen and just keeping tabs on stuff out of genuine interest. Yeah.
I think that that's important. And I think that, like I said, in the age of social media and the digital age, everybody is such a microwave era that we're in. Everybody wants everything fast. And I am a person who, in my stories, I do like to take my time, and I do like to get to know my subject. I think one of my friends, they laugh at me. They say it's like a method acting for you. You know, if I'm writing a story about African drummers, I want to go play those drums too. I want to see what that
story,
vibration
by the
feels
way.
like. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to see what that vibration of that drum feels like. You know, under my hand. You know, versus somebody just telling me. You know, somebody said they went to this waterfall and they found inspiration for a song. You know, I want to be able to go to that waterfall in Alton so that I can see what they saw. You know, and it's just so important for me to understand the subjects. I feel like it's the proper way to pay respect to the people who are sharing their stories and their memories with you. You know, things that they really value and care about. It's not something that should be rushed, in my opinion.
I love that. I mean, I love what you just said. These people are sharing their stories and their memories with you, and you take that very seriously. And
I'm putting it out to the world.
No, I mean, and I didn't. That's a deeper. I have a definitely above average connection with your work as a St. Louis creative myself. And I'm always reading and taking notes. And but what you just said too is even that's deeper than I realize. But as you say it, it totally makes sense. You know,
like these are people's lives, and I think that when people are moving fast and they're just worried about engagement and traffic to websites and clicks, it can get like really easily to dehumanize somebody's story, you know, and it's so important as journalists to ensure that, you know, these people's memories and stories are protected and that they're cared for the right way as you turn them into prose and publish it for everybody to see.
Yeah. Do you, do you write differently knowing that your audience is mostly going to be reading it online or on a screen? Does that change at all the story? You know, because I'm just curious.
No, not at all. No? I don't think about it at all.
Okay.
I know that one day of the week the story is going to run online, and every Friday it's going to be in print.
Okay.
But I don't consider the medium at all. I more so just want to tell a cohesive story that keeps them reading to the end.
Okay.
That's always my biggest thing. You know, I don't want them to read for 30 seconds and then go to the next story on another page. You know, I want them to be engaged, and I want them to visualize what they're reading in their mind.
Yeah. And do you usually take the photos that go along with it?
No, never.
Okay.
No, never. Sometimes we get handouts from the subjects. They'll submit pictures.
I've sent you the photos for my own
I wrote
stories.
about you in Pines Fest. So like they'll submit pictures and photo cred. But then we have an incredible team of photographers at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Many of them Pulitzer Prize winning photographers who go out on site and capture these images of subjects for us, whether it's at a show or I just did my 5 country music artists that you should know story, and we had one who was a cowboy, and so we went out and Michael B. Witt. Yes.
I love that picture, and I just can't believe that guy. I know I'm gonna sit down with him at some point, and
he's incredible. He has an incredible story.
I've sang with him once at a show with Brian Owens, and even then I was just his whole. He is interesting. He must be interesting to write about.
He is a cool guy, and he is a real cowboy. He has grown up around on ranches and around horses and cows and on farms his entire life.
But all in like the Metro East, right?
In East St. Louis, Cahokia area.
I think the East Side is so interesting for so many reasons. But as a St. Louis City native my whole life, when I go over to the East Side, it's so, as the crow flies, it's so close to my house or the neighborhoods of South St. Louis, but it's so already, for reasons both sort of related to urban decay and decline, which are tragic, but also just the way that the landscape is set up, it's so much more just like wild all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Which I just think is so crazy. I'll leave my house, I'll drive across the bridge, and if you drove the same way west through or north or south through any of the St. Louis counties, it would just be like suburbs and buildings forever and ever and ever, you know? And you just drive like 10 minutes. I've just drive 10 minutes east from my house and there's fields, you know? And it's just a vibe that I think is really funky.
It's very interesting in East St. Louis. It, like St. Louis was, at one point was a very industrial city. And it also was one of the most thriving African-American communities in the country at one point in time. We all know Miles Davis grew up in East St. Louis at 1701 Kansas Avenue, you know? And so that community was really thriving before the riots, you know,
which I read about in the Post-Dispatch.
Yeah.
So I've learned so much. I mean, they did an archival story about that was like a 1917.
Yeah, I think they changed a lot about
holy.
East St. Louis after that. But what I will say is that East St. Louis is a musical hidden gem of the Midwest. Both with artists who are coming out of East St. Louis now, like Russell Gunn, who is a trumpeter from East St. Louis, who's keeping Miles' legacy alive and performing inside of his styles across the country. You know, and even the history of music in East St. Louis beyond Miles Davis. We talked about Katherine Dunham was in East St. Louis and had her performing arts program there, and that spawned 5 generations of African drum and dancers coming out of East St. Louis. At one point in time, people around the country were traveling to East St. Louis to learn.
Crazy.
You know, or now Weedy Brahma, who was the student of Katherine Dunham, who just back in February was nominated for a Grammy for his work as a djembe fola, which is an African drummer who specifically plays the djembe, you know, or Miles Davis's childhood home is a museum, the House of Miles. I was just there this weekend. They had a huge gathering where they were just celebrating the youth inside of the East St. Louis Cahokia community and celebrating 10 years of being open and preserving Miles' childhood home, which before they found it was on the demolition list.
Wow.
You know, so I think that there's so many hidden musical gems in East St. Louis, and I am on some type of Tomb Raider-esque mission to find the musical stories of East St. Louis and ensure that, you know, they're documented on this side of the river.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, East St. Louis is super important. It gets a bad rap. I think I saw a Facebook post with a gentleman who was from St. Louis, and he went over to East St. Louis and took a picture in front of their welcome sign and said, you know, that's the most dangerous thing he's ever done. And, you know, the one thing that I will say is don't judge a book by its cover. And the other thing that I will say is that the things that we look at and feel like, you know, they're not pretty to look at, you know, it could be a blink of an eye or a snap of a finger, and that could be our situation too. You know, so I encourage everybody to learn more about East St. Louis's history, both musically and culturally, because that was once a beautiful, thriving community, and the people that are still there are working to keep their legacy alive.
Absolutely. Wow. I love that little journey that you just took us on.
Yeah, shout out to East St. Louis and everybody from that side of the river.
Absolutely, and the whole beyond just East St. Louis, right? I mean, because it's like a whole the Metro East is what I call it. And there's insanely rich history out there, and it is, you know, it's all part of our urban area here, but it's, you know, there's different dividing lines in St. Louis. There's Del Mar. And there's also the Mississippi River, you know, and people cross back and forth all the time, but it's just a different vibe, and I enjoy it and appreciate it when I go over there for so many different reasons. And that's why when I saw that picture of Michael B. Witt on the horse, I just like there's so many layers to why that just blew my mind, you know?
Yeah. And there's a full thriving community over there with, you know, cowboys of the Metro East and over on our side too.
I've seen something about that.
Yeah, like, I'm working on a cool story about that, so stay tuned in the summer.
Oh my gosh, I've learned so many amazing things from stltoday.com. I really have. There was a moment, I think I started reading it because I was trying to hustle our band to Kevin Johnson, and he was so gracious to take the time with me. So shout out Kevin Johnson.
Shout out to Kevin Johnson, yes for sure. He was in the role that I'm in now for 26 years. He really just laid an amazing foundation for me to come in 2 years ago, and has been an incredible mentor to me inside of my role. I actually first met Kevin when I was an intern, when I was 18 at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And we stayed friends when my internship ended. And Kevin is just such an incredible journalist. You know, we really need more people telling music stories, and he did an incredible job for nearly 3 decades here in our city.
Where is he now?
I think he is back in the Maryland, DMV area.
Okay.
Doing incredible things as a writer. I can't wait for him to visit so we can see him soon.
He was so gracious to talk to me, and so I got on his radar. And of course, once the story published, I had to get through the paywall to read it. And that whole thing about the paywall is so interesting because we're kind of spoiled and almost bratty, our culture today, because everyone, we just want it on demand. Music's free, which is egregious and a tragedy in my opinion. But and people are just like, oh, I could never pay to read something anymore, which is crazy. But I went through that paywall and I've been a subscriber ever since. And I've read so much stuff. It's so incredible. And I do feel like I wish more of our generation.
Yeah.
Because we're about the same age. So millennials and Gen Z, I'm like, man, this is where it's at. I mean, if you're a musician in St. Louis or a creative, you should be reading Jasmine's stuff and you should be reading Kevin's stuff before her. I mean, really, it's a huge tool. I think a resource, an asset to like learn about each other.
Yeah.
And connect. And that is so rich. Meet Me in Music is brought to you by Hands Brewing Company, St. Louis's hometown craft brewery behind the now iconic Citywide Ale, the Citywide Light Lager, and of course, my favorite, the Four Seasons IPA Incarnation. Check them out at their amazing downtown tap room just south of Busch Stadium, or the Peacemaker location in Kirkwood, and of course, the District in Chesterfield. Bold craft beer with St. Louis soul. It's Hands Brewing Company. Okay, what came first for you? The music or the writing?
I think that the writing came first for me. Yeah, the writing, the reading came first.
I love that.
Yes, the reading came first for me. I love to read and still do to this day. I'm reading an incredible book right now called Verity. Everybody should check it out.
Cool.
Shameless plug for that lady, the writer.
I love that.
But I think it's Frida McPherson, I think it's her name, or
Okay.
Colleen. One of those two. They write very similar books, but yes. But I love to read. And like I said, my mom challenged me to read the Harry Potter books. And I started reading those. And at the same time, I kind of started writing my own short stories and poems. And I remember going to my mom when I maybe was I would say probably around the same, not long after I started reading Harry Potter, because I really enjoyed J.K. Rowling's style. I was like, I want to write books like this. And so I went to my mom and I told her like, hey, I want to write books. I want that to be my job. Everybody's what you want to be when you grow up. And she was like, okay. My mom is very much so a realist. And she's like, well, what are you going to do if your books don't sell? How are you going to feed your family? And so I was like this 9-10-year-old kid trying to figure out how I was going to feed my family. And I did some research.
Probably writing about it.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out.
You were a writer even back then.
Yeah, I did some research on it, just like how to make money from writing.
Yeah.
And I came across journalism. And so that's when I started, trying to like write little articles on my own. And then I went to middle school and there wasn't a student newspaper there. So me and a really good friend of mine named Lindsay Walker, who actually is a publicist now, we started a student newsletter.
And what middle school is this?
I went to River Roads Lutheran School. It's a very small private Lutheran school in Baden, which is a neighborhood in St. Louis. And me and Lindsay started a student newsletter. And it was the first edition was for Grandparents' Day. And so that was my first kind of step into journalism. I would say around that same time in middle school, I got really into pop culture. We'll watch all the award shows, the Emmys, the Academy Awards, the Grammys, and then we had our MTV Music Awards and all of that stuff. And I would, MySpace and stuff started popping in high school. So I'd be posting about it on MySpace, and then Twitter came into play, and so I would live tweet during award shows. And then in high school, I did student newspaper, of course. Shout out to the Hazelwood East Spectrum, which is actually a historical student newspaper. They were a part of a lawsuit, and I believe the 70s or the 80s that established like libel rules for like high school student newspapers. But I wrote for the paper, and my junior year, I went to a month-long summer camp at Northwestern University in Chicago called the National High School Institute, and they selected 88 kids from around the world to come there for a month and study journalism. And that really was like, okay, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's so powerful. What were some of the other things when you were a kid? Maybe and from the Harry Potter age that you were, but maybe throughout leading up to that Northwestern period, what were other things that you were reading that really just like blew your mind? Whether it's books or journalism pieces, but stuff that just like pow, you know?
I loved all the magazines.
Okay.
Cosmo and Teen Vogue.
So you are a pop culture.
I have always been a pop culture girly. I want to know what's going on with the famous people.
Yeah.
I want to talk to the famous people. I want to ask questions about my favorite songs to my favorite artists. That was always my thing.
Who were those favorite artists?
Favorite artists as a kid?
Yeah. When you're reading those, because I had the same kind of magazines too, and you know, what were your idols? Who were you cutting out and taping to the bedroom wall?
NSYNC, Britney Spears. Backstreet Boys.
Oh, yeah.
That was like really early on, like elementary school.
That's my roots too.
Yeah. I think that by middle school though, I was just all about John Mayer. That's all I cared about middle school and high school is John Mayer. Into high school, I started getting into I was much more into like pop music and like alt rock music growing up. Yeah. And so by high school, I kind of started navigating away from John, but middle school was all about John. And then high school, it was just all over the place with pop music. Lady Gaga had came out and 30 Seconds to Mars and, you know, anything alt rock, Three Doors Down and anything alt rock was my vibe. But John Mayer, I was just in love with John Mayer. I think I was in 7th grade and I was watching Fuse TV before school and the video for Bigger Than My Body came on. And after that, it was all about John for me.
Wow. That's cool. I mean, I'm having these moments of like, duh, but you know, of course you have this insanely broad, diverse taste, you know, but yeah, I love hearing that because that's so fascinating to me that you and I didn't know each other as kids and come from presumably different backgrounds, but that's the same stuff I was listening to.
Yeah. We went to church a lot. We were a big church going family. And so a lot of like the hip hop, I couldn't listen to that as a kid. You know, my mom wouldn't allow us to listen to that. And we would get some R&B, like Magic, I think it was like Magic 105 and stuff like that. We would get a little bit of maybe like a more old school R&B, more soul. Yeah. You know, but a lot of hip hop and a lot of like urban music culture, I really didn't get into until I went to college. And I had a little bit more liberty over like what I could listen to, what type of music I could buy. And also that's when LimeWire came out and I was able to access music. Music access was different when that happened, when streaming popped up.
So you go to Mizzou for journalism, right? So, and that's like what Mizzou is known for, other than maybe, you know, football or something, whatever, you know, I went to a small state school, Truman State. So I didn't have that big Mizzou culture, but yeah, every time I heard about Mizzou, it was the J school, you know? Tell me about that 4 years, 5 years, whatever it was.
It's a very brief story.
Okay.
I only went to Mizzou because I didn't get into Northwestern. Because Northwestern, Mizzou and Northwestern go back and forth for journalism every year as far as who's the best. I
see.
Because I went to the summer camp at Northwestern. So I didn't get into Northwestern, and so I went to Mizzou. And Mizzou was great. I had a great time there. But I was only there for 2 years. My sophomore year, I took my first journalism class. And the very first thing he told us was that we were wasting our time and that the only way to learn journalism was to go be a journalist. And so I went to be a journalist. Well, and I've had a byline ever since.
Wow. That's pretty profound. That's pretty radical.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, I constantly meet people. For a long time, I felt like I was a pariah for not having a degree. But now I meet people who are working in entertainment all the time, who have won Grammys and Emmys and all types of stuff. They don't have degrees either. Yeah. You know, they have very similar stories of they went and just started working inside of that profession. And the talent, you know, took them where they needed to go.
Yeah. I have similar feelings about that. I did not study music in any academic way. And then when I did try to do that, I failed that in college. I mean, literally failed my music minor because it was so rigid, classical. Yeah. There wasn't for you know, that's something I look back on and I think is unfortunate about so many education systems, even for grade school and stuff. There's not the sort of pop music or just real life music that people are, whatever it is, like American music, roots music, traditions, all of that becomes pop music. It's not validated in a school setting,
in a collegiate setting.
Yeah, or no, even way younger than that too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is changing in the last probably 10 to 20 years. And of course there's exceptions, but I even kind of remember being in high school, just having that feeling of like, I loved music. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to play guitar, but it was either audition for jazz band or nothing at my high school. And I just knew some power chords, you know, and knew some Neil Young songs and Bill Withers songs on the guitar, and just wanted, and it's like there was no container for me in that school setting to develop that stuff. I had to do all of that in my home life, you know?
Yeah. I felt like it was similar for me as a writer. There were some opportunities for writing in school, but not as many as I wanted. And I've always been a very like ambitious, proactive type of person. I'm always looking for the next opportunity. And so I started creating writing opportunities for myself. I remember being like 14 or 15 and sending like emails to publications asking them if I could write for them. I remember getting a no from like the St. Petersburg Time one time. I was like 15 years old. But I love school. I always was an overachiever in school. I was valedictorian of my graduating high school class.
Wow.
But after I went to that first journalism class, and you know, he said, he was like, the only way to learn journalism is to go do journalism. And
did he think you were actually did he think that his students were actually going to do that then? I mean,
I don't know if he really thought that we were going to do that, but I listened, and I think that I left like in the middle of second semester, sophomore year, and I came home and I just started writing for people. And I've written for a little bit of everybody here inside of St. Louis as far as print publications. I always had a byline, and I freelanced for 16 years before I started at the
because your bio here says, you know, there's some travel noir. I mean, there's like some of these more national or international newspapers.
Yeah,
you know?
I was a travel writer, I think for 3 or 4 years before I started at the newspaper. I just went to a bunch of different destinations all over the world, writing about their culture and the different things that you could do when you went to these places. I think my last press trip was to Calgary, Alberta in Canada, in July of 2024. And then I started at the newspaper in August of 2024.
Wow. When that, did you like, sounds like, you know, you're a go-getter and you're kind of manifesting a lot of these things. So when that job opened up, I mean, were you just like, that's what I want?
I honestly have I have a little bit of like analysis paralysis and a little bit of like imposter syndrome too. And so it had kind of sat there for a while before I applied. And Lindsay Walker, my friend from middle school, who we started the newsletter together, she called me and she said, if you don't apply for this job, I'm going to submit your stuff for the job. And so I was on a press trip when that happened. I was in Virginia Beach for the, what is it called? The Point, it's like Point Fest, Virginia Beach. It's a big skateboard festival and music festival that they do. Sublime was performing. And I was there in Virginia Beach in my hotel room, and she called me. She was like, you need to apply for this or I'm going to put it in for you. And so I went ahead and submitted the application. And I think around April, in the beginning of May 2024 was when I got an email like asking me to hop on like the Zoom to do the virtual interview. And then I was doing all of these press trips. I think I went to Hawaii and Miami.
And that was for travel writing?
For travel writing, yeah. For Travel Noir. I was a staff writer for them. And I went to all these different places. And when I made it to Canada, by the time I made it to Canada, I just really felt in my heart that this job was for me. And me and my friends and my family, like we never talked about it like as if like when you get the job. From the moment I applied, it was like when I start the job, you know, well, I'm going to write about this when I start the job, and I'm going to write about this when I start the job. And everybody around me talked about it as if I already had the job from the moment I applied for the job. And I went to Canada for the Calgary Stampede in July of 24, maybe like end of June. I believe it was beginning of July. And yes, it was July 5th through the 10th. And when I was there and I was talking to all the other travel journalists who were on the trip with us, I just kept telling them that this was my last press trip. I just kept telling them like this is the end of me being a travel writer. And they're like, well, what's going on? I'm like, I'm interviewing from this job and I know I'm gonna get it. Like I really feel that this is the job that God has for me. I worked for Square from 2018 to 2023 in their internal communications department. Another space in the writing communication world other than journalism. And I got laid off in 2023 at the beginning when Square first started laying people off, or Block now.
Yeah.
I was the comms people were the first to go. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew in my heart that I wanted to write full time. I did not want to go back to having a regular 9-to-5 and having a byline on the side like I'd always done. I wanted to write full time. And that's when I was doing travel writing. And I also was working part time at Starbucks because Starbucks gives health insurance to part time workers. And I went on that press trip in July, and I just was telling everybody that this was the last one, the last fam trip. It's friends and media trip. It's my last fam. And when I got on the plane to come back to St. Louis, I got an email from the newspaper asking me to come in for my in-person interview.
Wow.
And from there, it moved forward to August. And I think at the beginning of August, they offered me the job. And my last day as a travel writer was my birthday, August 14th. And then on August 19th, I started at the newspaper.
Looking for a yoga studio that actually meets you where you are? Check out Brick City Yoga, a community-focused studio in Benton Park West built for every experience level. Whether you're brand new or deep in your practice, they offer everything from restorative and yin to vinyasa flow, all in an inclusive, welcoming space. With accessible pricing and a come-as-you-are mindset, it's yoga without barriers. Drop in, grab a class pack, or become a member and start your practice today at Brick City Yoga. Wow, that's an incredible story. So, and it hasn't even been that long that you've been there, but I feel like you're rocking it. So, and you're
It feels
entrenched.
like it's been so much longer than what it actually has been.
I know. Because you put out a lot of incredible stuff, and truly, people need to go read these stories. That story about the African drummer in East St. Louis, or the guy that was teaching in that tradition. I mean, I had seen Weedy play many, many years ago, and kind of was like always like, wow, you know. I guess he had moved to New Orleans at that point, and but he was to me at that young age, and I was starting my music career. So anyone that was kind of like on tour or doing stuff was just like I was idolizing, and I always, in the back of my mind, I always just thought, how is he doing this exotic African drumming, but he's from St. Louis, It always just like it was so intriguing to me, And then one day I'm online a couple weeks ago and I read that story and I'm like, there it is. I didn't even have to see his name. I finished the story, but I knew right away. Then I was like, oh, that's incredible. Here's something I was thinking about. Because I saw you out this past Saturday.
Yes, at the Flowering Arts Festival. So like, you're a Leo, I'm kind of learning. Okay, so were you kind of an extrovert? Like do you ever get tired, or are you just out like on the beat and socializing and working, because there's kind of a blurry line for people like you and me, because our lives, it's not in clear lines, We're not always like clocking in and clocking out. But yeah, are you just like always out and you can't get enough, or how do you manage that? I definitely am out a lot.
Yeah, you see him every time I'm online. I mean, you are out there,
I'm always out somewhere. That is definitely true. But I am a Leo, but I have a Libra moon, and so I really need balance. Balance is super important to me. Too much of either thing, and I'm out of whack, So I balance like the being out with making sure that I make time for myself, and also making time for like my close friends and my family. That really kind of like levels me out, because I am out in public a lot around, social associates or music scene associates or strangers, So being able to like come home and be alone with just me and my dog. I have a standard poodle named Coco. So being able to just be at home with Coco and read my books and listen to music, and then also have time where I could just spend time with my friends and my family who know me well and beyond just the byline or on the internet, those things kind of balance me out a lot. So for every time you see me out or see me posting out on social media, there is another day where I am just at home watching Netflix or
doing
going down
your
some
pop
YouTube
culture
rabbit hole.
girly thing, you know?
Yeah, because I am just a girl.
Yeah. My God, I love that. I didn't know you did all this traveling before. I'm so impressed and intrigued with that. So, how has that kind of informed your view on St. Louis or your relationship with it? I feel like traveling is so eye-opening and so important for anyone, but like we're talking to St. Louisans here. I just think, I mean, our city has been historically influenced by the whole world. I mean, the world is connected. Our city has influenced the world, but but it's, so many people also, it's not good to just have such a small bubble. You know what I mean? So how has that part of your life, what has that brought you? And how does that make you feel about this place and feel good about it or bad about it or whatever?
I feel like travel changes people. Wherever you go, there's opportunities to learn new things and meet new people in every destination, whether near or far, And I feel like for me, it's kind of like threefold. One, I feel like when I've traveled places, I love being able to come back to St. Louis and find those same cultures and cuisines and stories here in St. Louis. St. Louis is really a melting pot. There's a little bit of everybody from everywhere in St. Louis.
True. Those cultures are here.
They're here. The food is here. The experiences are here. You just have to get outside of your bubble and find them. So I love being able to do that. Also think that there's a component of there's no place like home. I don't know. I feel like when I was a travel writer, I was really living out of suitcases, and I wasn't really at home a lot, and I didn't get to spend as much time with my friends and family, and I was missing stuff. And so it was always nice to be able to come home. But I also think that there's a such thing as geographical trauma. I wrote a story about it when I was writing for Travel Noir and talked to other people who, it's like it's that feeling when you're on your way back home from a trip and you kind of start to get a little sad. And you're kind of coming back home to everything that you have to deal with at home, the bills at home and the problems at home and the stressors at home. And you got a sick grandma and your dog is dying, you're
not Coco though.
No, not my dog, but your dog. But you're returning back to everything that you had left behind and went on this blissful vacation or work trip or whatever. And so I interviewed a bunch of people who had similar experiences of when they returned home, kind of felt a little sad. They experienced a little bit of like situational depression. And I think that was always my experience too. While I was always really happy to be coming back home because I was tired of the road, I always knew that home had other things that you don't have to worry about when you're in Hawaii or you're in Cabo, or Belize, you don't have to worry about those things there. So I think it's kind of a little bit of twofold. I love St. Louis to death, and I always will. But I do also think that there's a little bit of sadness when you're on that plane ride and you're about to land at Lambert.
Yeah. I feel that. What surprises me is I think I'm going to feel that. Like every time I'm out someplace amazing and I'm coming home and I'm like, man, and I kind of get picked up at the airport and I'm driving down 70 and I'm just looking around and it could be in the wintertime and I'm just like, why would I like this?
Why would I come back to this?
And so I'm always expecting myself to be so down on it. And there's something, so for some reason, I'm still just on a soul level. I can't even explain it. Like I'm so happy to be home and there is no place like home.
I feel like once I get to my dog making home, then I'm cool.
Yeah.
Like once I get to my dog, I'm
home.
okay.
Yeah.
The only time I didn't have that experience was when I was coming home from my trip to Hawaii. I hated Hawaii.
What? Yeah. Has anyone ever said that? Yeah.
I hated it. My story that I was writing when I went over there was they have this huge festival. I think it's every 7 years, every 3 or every 7 years or something, where all of the kingdoms from that area come together for a festival. And there's all of the cultures are there. Each one has like a little like tent where like they show like their culture and what it means. And from the moment I landed in Hawaii, I was sad. And just watching the way that tourism and capitalism has just ravaged their communities down there. It was a very depressing experience. The hotel that I stayed in used to be a palace that belonged to a princess that was killed,
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah.
I wish that Hawaii was better taken care of. I wish that, when I was interviewing people down there, they was telling me how they didn't feel like they had a culture, anymore. That Hawaiian culture had been washed away with tourism's version of what Hawaiian culture is. But there were kingdoms all across that area. It was the kingdom of Hawaii. They had a native language that they spoke that none of the new generations know. And I think that learning the true stories of the people who are native of that land totally made me not be able to enjoy all of the tourism that was being thrown in my face during that experience.
If buying or selling a home is on your bucket list this year, I've got someone you should know. Sydney Younghouse with Keller Williams is passionate about helping St. Louis families navigate the real estate process with confidence. She's knowledgeable, responsive, and genuinely cares about her clients. And she cares about live music too. She's been a longtime supporter of me and the Mighty Pines. Sydney is a great friend, and I'm so proud to have her as a sponsor on the show. Whether buying your first home, upgrading, downsizing, or just curious about what your home is worth, Sydney would love to help. Give her a call at 314-603-9556 or search Sydney Younghouse Realtor online. That's I feel that. And I want to ask, how does it, the more I grow up here and live here, and we learn the true stories of St. Louis, and a lot of those aren't happy stories, like the race riots in 1917 in East St. Louis. And just, you name it, that's a life's work to learn all of that stuff. And I think that's our work as good, conscious citizens here. But how does that, how do you deal with the stories, the tragedy in St. Louis that you either already knew or that you learn about just in your life? How do you
I've heard
carry that?
a lot of sad stories, talking to musicians who are from here. And I think that it's just all a part of the journey. The things that we go through, good and bad, are what make us who we are as creative people. Whether you're a writer, a singer, musician, or a visual artist, it's our experiences, good or bad, that we fuel into the art that people make, And so I think for me, I always try to do like some grounding, because I have heard some really sad stories from artists that I've written about, and so I try to make sure that I stay grounded. But I think that the biggest thing for me is just always remaining empathetic. And being able to put myself inside of the shoes of the people who I'm writing about, who might not have the best story. They might have went through a lot of tragedy or a lot of trauma, growing up inside of St. Louis or living inside of St. Louis. And it just goes back to what we were saying earlier, just honoring that person's stories and memories, not exploiting that person's stories and memories, or like, oh, they said this, and I know that I could put this in the headline, it's going to get a lot of clicks, and now you've exploited somebody's trauma after they trusted you with their stories. And so I think that empathy is always at the forefront for me.
Wow. It's rich work that you do, and I love reading your stuff, truly. And
Thank you so much.
It's informing so much of what I do. So as our closing remarks here, there's way too many questions I still have left, and we're gonna have to I'll bug you to now you have to do a story somehow, just so we can keep talking. Just so we can keep talking.
We have to keep this going some way.
It's so much fun. So leave me with some, and our audience here, leave us with some St. Louis artists to go seek out and listen to, and it doesn't, I don't want you to pick favorites, but just who comes to mind.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to break it down by genre.
Yeah.
I'm going to break it down by genre.
And tell us why too,
Got you. Let's see.
I'm putting you on the spot too.
You are putting me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
And anybody who I do not say, please charge it
that's
to
not
my
what this is about.
head and not my heart.
Yeah.
This is really just off the dome, folks. When I think about hip hop, I think about groups like 4 Deep, incredible hip hop ensemble from St. Louis. I think they're performing at Art Beat on June 4th. But they're incredible. I love their lyricism. I love their style. And it's just very mellow, chill, honest hip hop. Other folks, Love Bates, female MC from St. Louis. She has put out a song, Ring Around the Rosie, with Ebony Eyes, who is one of our legendary St. Louis rappers from St. Louis. KV the Writer, another incredible female MC coming out of St. Louis. Who else? On the younger side, Lil Durk. Love Lil Durk on the hip hop side. Of course, I love like our more seasoned MCs coming out of St. Louis, the T-Doubles, the Tef Pos, the Hakeem the Dream, Rockwell Knuckles, just incredible folks. On the rock side, I alt rock. I love the Mighty Pines.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yes, I love the Mighty Pines. I love the Pernikoff brothers. They are out of St. Louis. They went over to London a couple years ago and recorded.
They do amazing things.
They're amazing. Their album, Alondres, is amazing. I love their cover of Eleanor Rigby. I love Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles, but I really enjoyed their cover as well. Who else do I love? Of course, I love country. I have to shout out all my country people. Michael B. Witt.
Yeah, he's the man.
Yes, Russo and Co. Love them. Who else? Maddie Shell, Riley. So many amazing people on the countryside. Tiffany Ann. I love Tiffany Ann. On the pop side, there's a young lady named Katie Hines, who is really young. She's a Gen Z artist coming out of St. Louis, but she's incredible. I feel like she could give Taylor Swift a run for her money once she breaks into the mainstream. Who else? Oh, Janet Evra on the jazz side.
She was the last guest 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I love Janet. Here. I love her amazing, beautiful voice.
That's awesome.
And then we have our other ladies, Anita Jackson. There's just so many amazing people. And then, of course, on the rap side, we got to mention Kendall Davidson. He's performing at the City Winery this Friday. Who else? My goodness gracious.
You pretty much just named about everyone. I mean, not really. That's the magical thing.
There's so many people.
We think that we have got our head wrapped around it and we figured it out. And then we read a story that you wrote, and it's all the hip hop that you just named. I mean, I pride myself on being super aware of the music scene here, and I have such a blind spot when it comes to
so many
hip-hop.
Amazing hip hop artists.
Yeah.
Tree Villa. Who else? I feel like Don Crip falls more into like more R&B, but he's hip hop R&B. Anybody who says that the St. Louis music scene is not thriving is lying.
Or just ignorant. Out of touch.
Or just ignorant and out of touch, Get outside, go to these amazing venues that highlight our local talent, places like the Dark Room, the Key, the Hi-Hat, the Heavy Anchor, Evangeline's in the Central West End. There's so many venues that are prioritizing St. Louis-based artists. Can't forget the Sovereign and Off Broadway and the Old Rock House. Blueberry Hill Duck Room. Like, there are so many places where you can get a hefty dose of St. Louis live music across all genres. I have to shout out Jazz St. Louis and all the incredible talent that they're constantly putting on the stage at the Bistro. And then we have BB's
coming
Jazz,
back.
Blues, and Soup's coming back.
Very exciting.
So there are places around the city and into our suburbs and into the Metro East area that are supporting the live music talents of St. Louis artists. And if you want it, you can. It's out there for you.
I love that. I'm inspired. And humbled by that list of all those people I need to check out. Seriously, but that's ultimately
check 'em out.
That's the exciting part of being a music fan and being like a music nerd. It's
discovering
I can't wait
new music
to go check these out. So Jasmine, thank you for
Yes,
joining
thank
us
you.
today. This was an incredibly educational and inspiring talk just on your personal story, which I knew nothing about, but also the broader picture here.
Yeah.
And it was so great to have you. Folks, go out, subscribe to the Post-Dispatch and read Jasmine's amazing writing and just educate yourself and you will become more proud and inspired to call this place home. All right.
Yes, y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, Jasmine. Looking to step up your coffee game? Check out Kuva Coffee, a St. Louis proud owner-operated roaster that's been doing it right since 2003. They roast in small batches, so every cup is fresh, high quality, and honestly, you can taste the difference. You've probably seen them at the Tower Grove Farmers Market, where they've been a staple for 20 seasons. The best part? You can order online and have incredible coffee shipped straight to your front door. Head to kuvacoffee.com and upgrade your mornings with Kuva Coffee.
1, 2, 3. Something's happening between us. It's been building for a while. And I know this when I look into your eyes. You brushed up beside me, I could feel you leaning in. And I've never felt as good as when you touch my hand. Help me, woo, I wanna get next to you. So I'm asking you now, how's it gonna be? Will we keep on keeping on what has just begun happening naturally? Hey, yeah. Last night I was dreaming we were walking side by side. Closer, woo, wanna get next to you. Yeah, woo, I wanna get next to you. Yeah. Oh, I hope it's just beginning. I want to get to know you so much better than I do now. Tell me how closer, woo, I wanna get next to you. Yeah, woo, I wanna get next to you again.